Yay.
Got it?
Yep. Yeah.
Morning, Jennifer.
Morning, everybody.
Morning,
Morning,
Jennifer.
Britta.
Morning, Britta.
And
And Britta, I shared with Sabrina, even though the agenda doesn't have a spot for you, I was contemplating once I do the welcome and just do a brief 1-minute welcome to the folks and Hassad team and host. I wanted to turn it over to you for any welcoming remarks that you may have, and then I'll go right into the agenda, approval of minutes, and turn it over to Jennifer.
sounds great. I'd be happy to.
Perfect, perfect.
Sabrina, did the team email come through?
Yeah. Thank you. Exciting stuff. Lots happening, you guys.
We don't have many dull moments at host, do we?
Oh,
That is definitely true. But that's a good thing. Keeps things exciting.
There you go.
sure.
And Masha's a little bit, I think, under the weather, won't be doing her video, even though we're
Okay.
going to miss her beautiful face. I just thought I would share why.
Marsha, we've gotten really great comments and reactions to the sensitivity training. You did a great job. So I hope you know a lot of people really appreciated what you brought to it.
Well, thank you so much. And Daryl, you do not have to throw me under the bus because my video is not up today.
No, I'm
gonna
not
show
throwing
you-
a
Okay.
bus.
But so look, thank you so much, Britta, for allowing me. I just didn't know the impact that video would have for all of the city and county of Denver, along with I'm hearing some contractors and things like that. So it's been, I've had such great feedback, and just didn't think it had the impact it did. So I am appreciative of you.
Well, you are a pretty impactful lady.
Thank you. Even without a face today. How about that?
Just the name Marsha Brown, I tell you.
Hey, good morning, Josh. Good morning, Myra. Good morning, Melanie. Great seeing you all. We're going to give it a few minutes for folks to sign in. At 9 o'clock, I'm sure folks are jumping from one call to another. And so before we start up, we'll wait a second. And Derek, I think you may have access to Catherine's acceptance. Did we have any board members that declined the meeting? Either Sabrina or Derek?
Let me look real quick.
So at this point, we do not have a quorum for the vote, but I'm sure we will.
Yeah, the link that was sent this morning didn't work. I had to go to the one that was in the calendar invite from last week. So I think that may be causing issues.
Did you click on the big box or the one under it that says sign as an attendee?
I didn't get either of those boxes. So I just went to the one in the calendar invite.
The one that said click to join here in the calendar invite is what worked for me.
Okay. Apologies for that.
It looks like Maria is in our attendee list, so maybe we can promote her to panelist.
Crumbling dynasty, making it.
And thanks everyone as you're joining. We're going to give folks a few more moments. We have some board members that are turning on, signing in. And so it'll be about a minute or so. I know it's a tight meeting with just 1 hour, but we want to make sure we have everyone that wants to attend or needs to attend on the call. So just give us one more minute and we'll start with our welcome an agenda and approval of the minutes. Well, for efficiency, we now have a quorum, so I think we're solid. So Britta, if you're good, I'm good with starting this meeting up and welcoming folks to the HSA, Housing Stability Strategic Advisors for Host December board meeting. My name is Daryl Watson. I'm the chair of this rowdy bunch of folks who are committed to co-create with you a healthy, housed, and connected Denver. We call this meeting to order. I wanted to start by saying happy holidays to those that celebrate, and for those who, this time of year is kind of tough for a lot of people, missing family, not around family, don't have access or to family, or are dealing with housing instability. We hear you and we see you, and we hope that you find your way through this holiday to support and the communities that you need. Wanted to stop for a second and see if our great leader, Britta Fisher, and has any welcoming comments to folks on the call.
Thanks so much, Daryl. Yeah, it's just an ever evolving and really exciting time here in the city of Denver as we work to meet needs and start to wind down some elements of our COVID emergency response while starting to ramp up some recovery elements as well. I was yesterday with a few folks here that may be on the call at a groundbreaking, and every day in Denver that we are breaking ground or opening affordable housing is a great day. This was a community-led community land trust model housing that is home ownership in the Globeville, Elyria, Swansea Affordable Housing Collaborative. And it was great to be there and celebrate that groundbreaking for more affordable homes in Denver. I also just have to take a moment and acknowledge and celebrate Denver voters who passed 2B, which was a measure that approved bond money for housing and shelter infrastructure for the first time in Denver's history. This is the first time where we saw a bond measure for housing and shelter as infrastructure of our community. And I think that's really notable. And so my gratitude for Denver voters and for all of you who had been advocating for additional investment in this work and in our plan. Speaking of plans, of course, our strategic plan did in fact pass of our city council, and our action plan is one of the points of focus today. And so we have so much work to get done. We have lots of things to move the needle on, and we're so excited that so many community partners are doing that work. I want to just acknowledge one other thing, which is that Deborah Bustos, who is our Deputy Director of Housing Opportunity, will be retiring very soon, December 17th. She'll be concluding her time, and we have selected our next Deputy Director of Housing Opportunity. Her name is Renee Gallegos, and she will be really full-time and in action coming in January, and she'll do a little overlap with Deborah here in the next few days. So we're so excited to have Renee come and join us. She has a breadth of experience across our affordable housing spectrum, everything from housing development to housing finance to compliance. She really has a breadth of experience that matches up to the breadth of our portfolio as well. So with that, I do want to just end again on thanking Deborah Bustos, who has served so well in our executive team and as a leader in our organization, and just really salute everyone who's working so hard to help support our neighbors here in Denver.
Thank you, Britta, and I reiterate, thank you, Deborah, for your decades of leadership. You will be missed, but I am certain that you're not going to be far. So I'm sure we will be seeing and hearing from you throughout. So thank you so much for all of the ways in which you've led through your heart and also through the ways in which you allowed for a process to support folks who are dealing with housing instability for many decades.
Thank you. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Deborah. Want to talk through the agenda a little bit. So today we will have public comment, but it'll come to the end of our meetings. Starting in January, each of our calls will begin with a section for public comment. And so we just wanted to let folks know that are on, because there was a meeting on December 2nd, we figured let's dedicate this 1 hour, because it's a tight period of time for us to have feedback from the HSSA board members and have the presentations from host, and then any additional comments from the public at the end. We will start off the meeting with the approval of the minutes. Jennifer Bice will walk us through the proposed 2022 action plan. Hissa will vote on the action plan, and so I'll be asking each of the board members for any thoughts that they have with the plan or any questions they have for host. Brad Weinig will provide a high-level update of expanding housing affordability proposal, and then we'll open for public comment. The minutes for the meeting were sent to the board prior to the call. I move that the minutes be approved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Any questions about the minutes? And usually what I direct board members to look at is, if you're listed as not present and you were, that'll be a good thing for us to correct for the record. Any questions, clarifications, amendments to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll ask the board members to come off of mute, and all in favor say yes.
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 Any
Yes.
opposed? I love
Yes.
that yes, Josh. Any opposed? Hearing none. Any abstains? None. The minutes have been approved. And I'll ask Sabrina, or possibly it's Derek, if we can record this part of the meeting. And the reason I'm asking for the recording, because the approval of the action plan and possibly any feedback from the HSSA board members, it may be of interest to the public beyond this call. And so, and if we can record it and then save it to the internet, which will make it easier to hang it on the website or the,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of time to do that before I turn it over to Jennifer.
Derek can confirm, but I believe we're already recording.
That's correct. We are.
Okay. All right. So Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Daryl, and good morning, everyone. I am Jennifer Bice, the Director of Data Policy and Strategy for HOST, and I am joined this morning by our Director of Communications and Community Engagement, Sabrina Alley, and we are here to talk to you about our 2022 action plan. And so with that, I will turn it over to Sabrina to give us just a quick reminder of the goals of our 5-year plan.
Thanks, Jennifer. Apologies in advance. This is blurry and we don't expect you to read it all, but we wanted to just give everybody a little bit of a framing that, we just passed our 5-year strategic plan through City Council. It was adopted in November. So just wanted to give everybody a reminder that the 2022 action plan is our first year of that 5-year plan. And so we are working under our HOST vision of healthy, housed, and connected, and really working toward the primary goals that we have in each of our division areas under advancing equity, which is really our core value across everything we do, and then housing opportunity, housing stability, homelessness resolution, and operations being our primary pillars. You can also see in the action plan how we have the goals laid out in each of these different pillar areas. And then also we have targets that are laid out. So there are 14 goals with measurable targets that all came out of the 5-year strategic plan. And you'll see those reiterated at the beginning of the 2022 action plan. And then I'll kick it over to Jennifer to talk about our key priorities in this year's plan.
Thanks, Sabrina. Yeah, so we're not going to go into detail of all of the content of the 2022 action plan, because I know we presented that last week at our community kind of virtual town hall event, but did want to remind folks of some of the key priorities for the coming year as we seek to begin implementation of our 5-year vision. So first, Host is fortunate to have, as Britta mentioned at the beginning, recovery funding as we come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're really looking to invest that funding to expand housing, bolster critical investments to relieve involuntary displacement pressures and expand housing stability programs, and invest in shelter and shelter alternatives, including safe outdoor space, tiny homes, and safe parking, while we also work to scale those housing solutions. Additionally, in this coming year, we will create and preserve more than 1,400 affordable rental and for sale homes. That includes 185 units of supportive housing. And this is about 20% toward our 7,000 unit goal that was anticipated in the 5-year plan. Additionally, we will serve more than 6,000 households in our housing stability programs. That includes things like rent and utility assistance, illegal eviction legal defense, and other programs. Next slide. Additionally, in our homelessness resolution work, we will be housing at least 1,400 households experiencing homelessness through our homelessness resolution programs. Also, one of the key goals from this plan is around our reduction in unsheltered homelessness over the next 5 years, and we're really focusing on that in this first year, including really looking to expand outreach efforts, innovative housing efforts, supporting those shelter and shelter alternatives, as well as really focusing on real-time quality data collection, particularly for residents who are unsheltered. Additionally, we will be advancing critical policy priorities to increase our affordable housing supply and address involuntary displacement. Those include expanding housing affordability, which Brad will talk about a little bit later this morning, and a prioritization policy. And lastly, we will be really focusing on increasing our operational support for all of these efforts, including by centering residents with lived experience in communications and engagement efforts, improving the transparency and effectiveness of contracting, procurement, and financial processes, and establishing data and reporting tools that report out on plan progress. Next slide. And Sabrina, do you want to talk a bit about some of our community engagement efforts?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. So in terms of community engagement, we posted the 2022 action plan back on November 22nd. We posted in both English and Spanish for public review and feedback. So that has been up on the website, and we've been pushing that out in a number of different channels. We also held a public meeting on December 2nd. Some of you attended that, so thank you. We had 35 attendees and we had 10 questions with a lot of really great discussion. And then we shared the plan and/or received feedback from a number of different partners. So obviously all of you, Neighborhood Development Collaborative, got significant feedback from them. We did share this with our philanthropic funders that worked with us on the 5-year strategic plan as well. A lot of our partners and providers, everybody who's on our newsletter blast list was informed about the plan coming out and how to access it and provide feedback. We did share with Denver Homeless Out Loud and other advocacy partners and had a feedback meeting with them, and then also got some feedback from members of the general public through our emails as well. So fairly significant engagement for the 2022 action plan, especially having come on the heels of all the engagement that we did for the 5-year strategic plan, which, as you know, is extensive. And so I'm going to let Jennifer go over what we changed as a result of that feedback we received.
Thanks, Sabrina. Yeah, so as Sabrina mentioned, we really engaged with additional folks for this 2022 action plan. Want to thank all of our housing stability strategic advisors who also sent feedback during that public comment period. It's very helpful. And we did really look at all of that feedback holistically and make changes to the plan based on what we've heard from folks. And so first, in the section on advancing equity, we added additional description and clarification around how Host is tailoring our approaches as we do this critical work. In our work in the section of the plan on housing opportunity, we did get some questions about the role of EHA, expanding housing affordability, and negotiated units in those targets. And so that's clarified in the final plan. And we also really look to add a progress note to reflect some work that we are planning to do in the coming year, but wasn't in the first plan or the first draft of the plan around really examining our down payment assistance approaches and seeing how we can make those as impactful as possible in the next year. Additionally, in our homelessness resolution space, we clarified that the targeted number of households housed in the coming year, the first draft of the plan referenced 1,400 households housed through homelessness resolution programs and 900 households housed in Denver through our regional coordinated entry system, One Home. And there is some duplication between those two numbers because our programs that we fund do use the One Home system to fill vacancies in their programs. And so we really sought to clarify that and make sure those goals were clear. Additionally, we added new kind of key priority language to really elevate the work that we plan to do this year around with our partners around data quality in HMIS for folks experiencing unsheltered homelessness and our work with our outreach partners there. Additionally, we added some more context and explanation through a sidebar around guaranteed income and that what that approach looks like and how it may inform our work. We also really marked that strategy around data quality again for unsheltered residents as a high priority for 2022. And lastly, we added a bullet to clarify really that relationship between our current kind of suite of outreach programs. We have a number of different outreach approaches, both within the city and through our partners, including Denver Street Outreach Collaborative, Strategic Outreach to Large Encampments, and Early Intervention Team. And so really trying to clarify the roles of those teams and acknowledge the breadth of the outreach work that we have, while also still acknowledging the exciting opportunity for the early intervention team to transfer to host in 2022 and be expanded. And so those were just some of the more major substantive changes that we made. We did, of course, get additional comments to clarify things and those types of edits. We made all of those changes as well, but just wanted to highlight those more substantive pieces for HSSA members' consideration and for the community folks on the call this morning. And with that, I will turn it back over to Daryl.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I want to thank host for all of the outreach and as Sabrina shared, a lot of the community engagement through the passage of 5-year strategic plan. It was extensive. There was a lot of outreach to lots of communities over the last year for that plan, with similar outreach for this first iteration of the action plan for 2022. And so wanted to, at minimum, just pause and really thank the team for all of the work that you have done, all the ways that you have sought to make this an inclusive process. Your review of equity, I think, was very important for this plan going forward. And I thank you for this opportunity for the board to take a look at, to listen to you with the overview, and for the board to provide questions to host. Each of the board members on the call this morning, I know each of you had the opportunity to participate in the December 2nd public town hall dialogue. You also had an opportunity to provide direct questions to Jennifer and to Sabrina and Britta and team. We're going to have a vote on whether we approve or not this first iterative step of the action plan. And so I'm going to actually do this a little differently. I'm going to go through and ask each board member if they have individual questions for Jennifer and for the wider team. Once we go through that question process, I will then call for a motion and a second and then a vote on the acceptance of the action plan. So let me look through who I'm seeing first, and the first on the list is Josh. Josh, what questions or thoughts, and I think even from when you consider from the perspective of service providers and the other work that you do, on any of the targets from the funding to preserving homes to specifically reduction of homelessness, are there any questions that you have for Jennifer and team that are still outstanding that may directly impact the work that you do and others who do work as service providers?
Thanks, Daryl. At this point, I don't know that I do. I mean, I certainly appreciate how this has been updated to reflect public comment, at least as I read through public comments, the changes that have been made. I mean, I feel like I am positioned to get questions I have answered in real time quite often. And so because of that, I don't think I have anything for today, and certainly not anything that would hold up my full approval of this plan as written. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Josh. Randy, I see that you're on. It's good to see you on the call. I know you've had opportunity to speak to the action plan as well, to ask questions. I know that you have really focused on making sure that there's access in some of the language and the targets as we look at equity. I'm wondering, from the action plan perspective, are those questions answered, and do you have additional questions for Jennifer and team about the action plan?
Hi, thank you very much. I think those questions have been answered. I think it was addressed very well in the action plan. My question that I have, and this may have been covered at one of the meetings that I couldn't make it to, but on page 4 of the action plan, you talk about creating and preserving more than 1,400 affordable rental and for sale homes. I'm wondering, do you have any kind of an idea what the breakdown will be on how many will be created, how many will be preserved, and then also how many are going to be rental and how many are going to be for sale?
Yep, thanks, Randy. I'm happy to start with that. There is in the action plan, and I think we could probably actually put a screenshot of that graphic in the chat here in just a second, but there is a table that breaks down units by rental versus for sale, and within that, creation versus preservation, and also provide some information on AMI levels. So I don't remember the exact page number off the top of my head, but we'll put that info in the chat.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was my only question. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Randy. Let's turn to Melanie. Melanie, I know you and I have had a lot of discussions around data, data quality. I'm curious as to what questions do you have that may still be outstanding on whether it's HMIS, MDHI, any of the interaction regionally as the action plan speaks to, anything of that sort that will inform not only the public, but HSSA and host as we're looking at this action plan.
Yeah, thanks, Daryl. So I had reviewed everything, had sent some questions. I'm excited to see the questions that I had raised, some of the feedback addressed in the summary that was just provided, and it was around the priority about the unsheltered and outreach data, and that connects to regional conversations that we're having, and I think that we are well poised to achieve that goal early next year if we're all setting it as a priority. So I feel excited. I'm happy to see that reflected. I think we can do it, and I don't have any other outstanding questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Maria, I see that you're on. I'm wondering from your perspective as well, service provider, someone who's been involved in this work for a while, what questions do you have about the action plan, their targets, on any of the levels, and I think maybe really touching the reduction of homelessness and the preservation of homes may sit in your wheelhouse. What thoughts do you have and questions for Jennifer?
Are you talking Maria Sepulveda?
Yes, and I guess I said your full name.
You mentioned homelessness, so I work in home ownership, and so I don't want to speak to homelessness just because my expertise doesn't lie there.
Yeah.
But I will say that I am curious, and it's kind of similar to Randy's question. Are we saying here, so in year one, is it around 15% of the preservation and building part of the continuum that's home ownership? Is that?
And Maria, I think your internet is not stable. You're going in and out a little bit. Not sure if you can hear me. I think you're froze there for a second. So Maria, we're going to come back to you. So if you're able to either call in or shake your laptop a little bit to walk around to another room, we'll get back to you. Jennifer, at least at the top, there were the beginning of our questions about the percent. Do you have is there anything you want to add to that? And I'm sure Maria will come and provide more details as to what exactly she's hitting on.
And Maria, it looks like you are no longer frozen on my end. So I don't know if you're.
I am so sorry. I am like, I don't know. The internet gods are not shining on me. But were you able to hear my question? I just was trying to get an understanding of year one is 15% building and preserving. Is it around 15% the goal? Is that what I'm understanding?
And Maria, just to clarify, are you focusing first on for sale or for sale and rental in that preservation category?
Well, and I was asking, I was reading where it was broken out, both of them were there, and I kind of just added numbers together. So both building, preserving, adding together, home ownership, affordable home ownership, I guess maybe some attainable, a little bit higher, and I'm counting that in there too. Is the goal there around 15%? Is that what I'm seeing that year one goal is, and maybe?
Struggling to find where I can upload files in Zoom this morning. So give me, and Jenny, is correct. It's on page 14.
Yeah, and that's what
Yes.
I was looking at page 14. I was doing my own math. So that was what was scaring me. So I was trying to understand, is that the goal for year one around home ownership, building and preserving 15% or 15% of the, okay. Yeah, obviously.
I think that's, I just
ahead.
want to clarify one part of that, Maria. I think that's also just our reality of what we understand to be in the pipeline.
In the pipeline. Thank you. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to understand. Exactly. You answered it, Britta, is, that source. And so that's great. And then also I just had a comment, and the thing that excites me about this program and that excites me about this year's focus is the fact that there will be a focus on including affordable for rent and for sale across the entire city, including areas of a high opportunity. That piece right there makes me really happy. So I do support this, and I'm glad that that's a priority this coming year.
Thanks, Maria. I see Masha is next. Masha, what's your thoughts? I know we kind of spoke a little preemptively at the beginning of the call, but your thoughts and thinking on the action plan, any opportunities that you see or comments you have around the plan.
Thank you, Daryl. I appreciate having the opportunity to understand in depth last week, and actually get some questions regarding accountability and timeframes. How do we know, these things our processes are successful before, we wait a whole year to see if this information is making it out to our communities that, certainly looking for housing, and how are we facilitating that in a manner in which we're able to hold people accountable. And so those questions were asked. I don't have anything other than that in terms of questions, but I do want to just let it be known that that is something that is very near and dear to my heart, is making sure that as we look at these processes and we have our targets and our accountability, that we're actually doing the follow-up work to make sure whoever that third party is that's helping our families secure homes and locate shelter, that we are able to monitor and track whether those things are working. It's far too often our families are stuck saying, hey, I don't know what to do. I've already called. I don't get a call back. I've already emailed. I don't get an email. I'm not getting a response back. I don't know what to do next. I don't. And then we find that we have organizations or individuals within organizations that know what those next steps are. And my main concern is just to make sure that we are posting information inside of these shelters, that we have more than one person in the organization that knows about the different ways an individual can secure shelter for them, for their families, not necessarily one program over another, but just making sure that information is getting to the ground. And that process is working. I don't want to wait a year or 2 years to see that, sending the email out was working in the beginning, but we have all the, we have no way to check and balance. And that's something I've had extensive conversations with several with several folks, but and we're getting there. I do think that was the one caveat to this entire report, that I know it may be often overlooked, or maybe the accountability is further down the line or closer to the ground, but I do want to hold that in high regards for our families that are still suffering from not knowing what's available to them. And that was my only question regarding accountability timelines and things of that nature. Other than that, everything is wonderful when we're trying to resolve finding shelter for individuals and families. But that was the one thing I really wanted us to, really spend some time creating.
Yeah, Jennifer, I can speak to that a little bit, and then happy to have you fill in as the expert on all the things in the plan. But Marcia, certainly appreciate that feedback. And over the past year, we've been able to grow our Homelessness Resolution program team to help offer more robust monitoring across all of our contracts and programs in homelessness resolution, as those have grown significantly over the past couple of years. We also have a program officer who's focused specifically on family homelessness. And so Rosie McQuiggan is her name, and she'll be really focused in with our providers, helping to understand, where is the system the strongest, and we can work to strengthen it, and where are the places that we need to improve. In terms of the action plan, I know that Jennifer and I were speaking this week, made some updates around the conversation around access points. And I think that's sort of the phrasing that speaks to exactly what you're saying, that people need to know where they can go and how to access the services that they need. Just in the last half of this year, we've entered into a contract with the Salvation Army for what's called the Connection Center, which is a entry point or an access point to services for families experiencing homelessness. And so have been really grateful to get that off the ground, but certainly are aware and take the feedback as well that it hasn't fully reached to every corner of the community yet, and folks in crisis still need clear information about where they can go. So two things we're certainly working on, but appreciate your perspective always and that feedback.
Thank you so much, Angela. And Marcia, thank you for bringing that point forward. And obviously during these calls and in between calls and after calls, we'll have access to hosts to ensure that that commitment is transparent. And and we know that it is. And Angela and Jennifer, thank you for taking the extra steps to provide clarity on that as well.
Absolutely, thank you.
And Kwika, and then I'll go to Thomas next after Kwika, but thoughts, comments concerning the action plan?
Yeah, thank you so much, Daryl, for calling on me. Sorry for my lateness today. My morning ended up being just a little bit extra. So my initial thoughts are all the yes, right? When I see a plan this well laid out with, plans for strategy, progress notes, the attention given to unsheltered homelessness. Obviously, I'm a huge advocate for the unsheltered homelessness part of the plan, but I also have experience in the other pillars. The thing that was jumping out at me the most were, one, I see the meeting the needs of diverse people. But what I don't see is how we're going to do that as far as holding providers accountable to hiring culturally relevant folks. I know one of the big things for me in safe outdoor space is, from our referring parties, I get a ton of white referrals when we're trying to place an equity lens on the unsheltered population being half or a little over half. And then, I'm hearing, sometimes kind of roundabout, I don't want to label people or things that are said, but, they feel like really racist undertones around, oh, well, the Black referrals don't want services. And to me, that says, no, I don't think that's a thing. So I want to know how we're going to meet the needs of diverse people when some of our providers don't have any Black outreach workers. I think St. Francis Center has one, but like CCH, they don't have any Black providers. And, I want to dig into a little more of if we're not meeting those needs, how am I going to get referrals to meet our equity goals for programs like the Safe Outdoor Space and the Tiny Home Villages? So I'm not seeing any of that as far as progress or strategy, progress notes or how to check in on that. I think I would be really interested. I didn't see anything about, I see a lot of access points to, getting more vouchers for folks, but through DHA and through DHA, yes, thank you DHA for servicing all these vouchers, but they also have very stringent criminal background checks. So what that does is then, like right now I'm working on emergency housing vouchers and just going through the list of requirements, weeds out 25% of the people I'm serving because of their criminal history. And I would love to see how are we tracking some of those harder to serve clients? And, we're getting clients that have been kicked out of housing and that, DHA has eviction requirements. So like, when we think about who we're serving in the unsheltered population, there are points where they're falling through some of these other systems. And I would love to see some data and tracking through if we're losing people in the permanent supportive housing or SID programs, they wound up being unsheltered homelessness. And those are going to be the ones that we have the hardest time serving because of all the limitations when it comes to like one of our biggest housing providers or housing voucher providers. And those kind of larger policy issues. And I know we've been, working really hard on the housing surge and it's been so amazing, but like that was one of the barriers that we identified during the housing surge is these, criminal backgrounds or evictions and things like that. And then we all know like historically, those have been usually overrepresented by people of color. So, and then it kind of plays into the equity piece of all of that again. So those were my biggest takeaways. But I don't want that to overshadow this amazing plan. It's amazing. And I have just truly been honored to be a part of this. And you know, continue to ring the bell when I see it. So that's what I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Kwika, and I see some hands up. So let's first go to Sabrina, then Angela.
Thanks, Daryl. Just wanted to quickly say, Kwika, we really value that input, and we are, as part of the action plan, you'll see one of our strategies is working around creating a really comprehensive defined community engagement plan. And I think one of the things that we've heard a lot about is how we can perhaps do a little bit more training with our partners who have actually asked for some additional training on a number of different things like communication strategies. And I think equity can be part of that. And so I will definitely take that into account as we start to put that plan together and really think about how we might do more on that front. And then I know Angie was going to also talk a little bit about some of the efforts her team is making.
Awesome. Thank you, Sabrina, for that follow-up.
Yeah, thanks, Kwika, for raising this. I think overall, a few things to speak to, because you had a lot of ideas mentioned there. First is that the question or conversation around quality data is I think really wrapped up into this, particularly for our unsheltered population. You know, we end up with observational counts or the once annual survey through the point in time count, but we're really working to improve data quality through HMIS so that there's more of a personal understanding of folks over the course of a year who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness, as well as all of those demographic trends and things that can help show us where there's overrepresentation or disproportionate impact to certain demographic groups, and really help us to have you know, like we know a lot of these things. The limited data we have tells us some of this, but I think it's that much more impactful around seeking funding or creating programs that help meet discrete subpopulation needs to have that deeper data picture available to us. So that's certainly something reflected in this action plan, that we're working to improve that data, particularly around unsheltered folks. Second, I'll just mention that in the last big procurement we did, and then in our procurements thereafter, we've been doing asking partner agencies to provide a survey of the race and demographics of their staff, and to understand you know, how representative is their staff in reflecting the folks that they serve. And at this point, it's not with a look to score that or to limit funding, but it's signaling to the community that this is a value we have. And it's also then made its way into the contract as part of monitoring, that we'll monitor and talk about these things and continue to have the conversation at the forefront, so that we're always, I guess, making actionable that value that we have to have a more representative staff. But as you know, through those conversations, you know, through Housing Surge and with all of our providers, it's a complicated issue, but I think something everyone has a lot of commitment to try and do better. And we'll certainly work to do that as well.
Kwika,
Thanks, Angie.
was that helpful, Kwika?
Yeah, one more thing, the housing vouchers via DHA and criminal justice backgrounds and whatnot.
So one thing that came to mind, so a few things. One is that DHA is gratefully one of our more flexible partners in terms of a pretty robust appeals process. So while there may be initial denials that occur, the appeals process is fairly robust and in place to help support folks, but we know that there are still some folks who fall through. So we can continue to follow up with conversations, not just with the local housing authority, our partners at the state and Kristen, around, you know, what flexibilities can exist. One kind of neat innovation we've been seeing lately, especially with some of our supportive housing programs that are project-based, is to also then set aside a small number of tenant-based vouchers or tenant-based assistance that can help when folks are not working out in a particular property, with rehousing assistance to still keep them housed. So they're not exited from this apartment building to homelessness, but to another house situation someplace else that might work better for them. And so we're currently exploring how we can support that strategy in some other programs. But I'm sorry, I just lost I have a little thread there.
That's great. Maybe we can set up some time offline, because I've recently had some experiences where that process also goes through the DOLA, Department of Local Authorities, where the vouchers are issued from. And people have lost their appeals to be moved. So,
Quika, this is Kristen with DOLA. I'd love to hear more about that, because I was just writing a message saying I think, you know, we really aim to reduce that criminal background, and for any of our state funded, the vast majority have no criminal background that you can look at. Now, occasionally there'll be a project that's located, and part of the deal with the community is certain restrictions that get negotiated, but overwhelmingly, we really push for that. Now, our housing choice vouchers and some of our other federal, there are some things there, but I would love to hear if you've seen from state vouchers that appeal process hasn't worked or people have been denied, because we want to make sure that that is happening as infrequently as possible. So I'll put my email in the chat and would love to talk to you.
yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you for bringing it up. We need to hear that. We might think we have great ideas, and if we don't get the feedback to hear that they're not working or where there continue to be gaps, we can't make sure that we're having the impact we intended. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, thank you so much, Quika. Thank you for this dialogue. It is extremely important. I want to roll to Thomas and then Myra to receive some feedback. And then, of course, Kristen, any questions that you have outstanding. So first, Thomas, and then we'll go to Myra.
Good morning. I just wanted to echo, what Quika had, touched upon, the equity, diversity, and inclusion. Our community has a lot of trauma, historical trauma. I can already tell you right now, there are people who are waiting on the sidelines to see how these initiatives are going to affect our community. We kind of just wait and see, if a couple people go through the program, and then we see, hey, did they treat you good? Were they responsive to us? So our community, spreads information through word of mouth. So I'm looking at, all these initiatives, all these things are great. Again, our community wants to see how they're implemented first and how they affect our community. So I just like to throw out, some of that information there too. And again, with, inclusion and equity, the retention on that side, having a staff, knowing that, makeup and how, you are perceived by the community is also good. Just a quick note there too, in data, some tribes require that you ask them first to get permission to ask, if they have tribal members, but there are 570 plus tribes. So just double check to see, what the data, confidentiality is with that. I know that's some of the things that we have to double check too when it gets really, really, when you ask, are you Native American? If you are, what tribe? So just, making sure that, there's appropriate, confidentiality for that too, if that question is, asked. And, all these things are great. I've been looking through, all these things. Some of the, people in the community, we want to see how these things progress. We want to see how they are going to, affect our community in the long run. And again, if these are responsive to our community, a word of mouth, will spread, and we will continue to, I try to, get as many resources to the community as possible. But again, the trauma there, the historical trauma, the distrust of any kind of system, governmental, city, any of that, I just like to put that out there that, Native Americans, have that. They're thinking about that when they come and they're unhoused. But again, some situations that they come from, reservation life is not much better than being homeless. And, that's kind of hard to say, and kind of hard to deal with, but understanding that, coming to, these discussions, helps people understand that, we're trying to come to the city and realize, the potential of all these resources and opportunities. And I would just like, our community to grasp these opportunities and resources, even if they're unhoused, getting that jump start towards, a better effective future is something, one of my goals for sitting on this committee and, looking how these things impact Native Americans.
Thank you, Thomas. Any additional points from the city? I know that you spoke to the equity and inclusion. Thomas's piece was very specific to tribes. Any comments back to Thomas on that, or Thomas, do you feel like that was inclusive of the response to Kwika?
I think, Kwika outlined basically some of the things that I had been thinking about. Some of our, tribal members do have things, criminal records, things that do bar them from some of the resources there. But, having that information of, hey, you can appeal it. We can go through alternative routes to look for, solutions to this particular problem. Just disseminating that information and knowing that, again, I believe we touched upon it earlier, having that information provided, is always great. That was just my input on that. I think my questions were addressed previously, some of the things that Kwika brought up, but I just would like to put out there some of the information relevant to my community.
Thanks, Thomas. We really appreciate that. And I think both Thomas and Kwika really highlight a concern that we have in general, which is where are exclusions happening and where does that result in disparities in our system? And I think that's something we always need to pay very close attention to, because otherwise we will not achieve equitable outcomes. And so we take those comments very well, that we have more work to do there, and it's throughout our community that we need to look at where are barriers to entry, where are not culturally appropriate questions happening, things like that. So I really appreciate both of your comments.
Thank you, Britta, for sharing that. And Myra, what thoughts you have, and then we'll close our questions with Jenny.
Thanks, everybody. I really echo a lot of the sentiments that have already been shared. And a lot of the suggestions. I don't have questions, but I do have a short list of recommendations, things that as I was reading the action plan, my brain started going off experiences that I've heard out in our community, similar to what others have already shared as well from their own perspectives. But the first one, and I thought it was funny that two other folks brought it up, was maybe clarifying the table on page 14, because that was the first question I had, which was, what is the breakdown between preservation and building? And had you not shown me where to find it, I completely skipped over that. And so maybe it's not a table, maybe it's a chart. Similar to what we have further in the report. I think that would help capture the eye and help us see with the differentiation of color what we're trying to communicate there. But I also had comments on the housing stability section. We've been thinking about folks who have been evicted because of the pandemic, because of economic situations, but we haven't thought about what happens when people are evicted because a landlord sells a home. And so really wanting to bring some attention to those types of situations. I know here in our community, we hear a lot of stories of people being displaced because their housing situation changes through no fault of their own, but because of the conditions of the homeowner who they were renting from. And so potentially bringing in the new rental registry as part of one of those tools that we can use to help support include a goal that would include these populations. And then I was also thinking of goal 3, preventing foreclosures and income restricted homes. I was really thinking we should expand that definition or expand that support, and not just following the housing, but also the household, to include, first-time home buyers who might be of lower incomes, who are a paycheck or two away from being displaced, who have just purchased a home. And then also individuals who might be long-term homeowners, but who are now income restricted. And I'm thinking of our older residents who have retired, who are on a very tight budget. And as we're seeing with gentrification, things like increasing property taxes might put them at risk of displacement. And so suggesting that we expand that definition, not that it has to happen in this specific action plan, but something that we look forward to in the future, to start to encompass those folks that we might have left out. And then really wanting to echo Marcia's sentiment around transparency and accountability of our partners. We have an influx of funding coming in from the federal government. And I've just been thinking about organizations who are dispersing, for example, the ERAP funds. We have partnered with nonprofit organizations to help disperse those rental assistance and utility assistance funds, really wanting to make sure that we're expanding other accountability tools that we're using in other spaces and incorporating them into this new space, which isn't too new. We've been living in this pandemic for a while now, but really building out that accountability. And then as Kwika shared, also the community engagement piece. Part of our strategy should include relationship building and trust building. And just from experience working with the city on projects that you wouldn't think this would be an issue, there's a lot of mistrust that comes with receiving services from the city or working with the city. And so really pushing to include that in our future plans for community engagement, I think is going to be important, especially to mitigate that mistrust. And that was it. That's my list.
Thank you, Myra. I know those were just comments. The call is being recorded. I know that Britta and team are taking, will take into consideration each of those comments. So thank you for taking the time, Myra. Documenting that information is very important for this process. Jenny, let's come to you and see what your thoughts are, questions that you have for staff and for folks in the public who are on call. I know it's the top of the hour. The meeting was scheduled until 10. We will continue until the board finishes their questions and comments, and we call the question for the voting. So there will not be a public comment opportunity on this call. But Jenny?
Thanks, Daryl. I had one quick question, and I think I know the answer to this question, but just wanted, as Jennifer was going through the initial slides, it popped in my head, and then just a couple comments. And the question is a little bit along the lines of Maria's question. I know, Jennifer, you mentioned that we estimate 1,400 units will be produced in the next year, which is about 20% of the goal. So that's about on par. Just wondering, as we think about the extra ARPA resources that we're getting this year, kind of that influx to push the pipeline, if that estimate is based on what we see coming in, because it takes so long to have projects come through the pipeline, and seems like it's based more on what's realistic, or if we can expect that we'll get to that 7,000 units over the 5 years, even as we won't have ARPA resources or other extra resources to lean on to get to our goal.
7,000 is an ambitious goal. It's a stretch, and it will count on not just our resources, but being able to leverage other community resources. So we're glad for this first year to feel that we're at about the 20%, but any given year, it will depend if we're able to do more or less. We're really hopeful with our own ARPA resources and the state's ARPA resources that we will have chances to increase that. I don't think all of that will show up in 2022. I think a portion will, and I think 2023 is more likely to see a little bit more of the bump from those resources.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I agree with that. Okay. And then just a couple quick comments. One, and I think it actually gets to some points other people are making, but was just that I think to build the trust of community, to build the trust of various communities, to Thomas's point and Kwika's, having some really clear and transparent reporting to us and the community over time, I think will really help get at some of the questions or concerns that have been raised. You know, how are we doing? Who are we serving? How are we really able to serve the needs of specific communities? Are we able to get there? And so I'm looking forward as HASA and over the 5 years to really see how we're progressing and really be able to get our arms around and understand how that's working. And so curious to hear or learn more sometime in the future about how we will be keeping up on that as this body. And another comment, I know I've shared this in another meeting and shared with Deborah, some of the things I've heard from on the housing production side are just to allow more flexibility in the way that funds are flowing to projects, not put unnecessary burdens on those partners in the way that the city is distributing funds for production and preservation and programs. And I think that there have been some change of practice that's causing some heartburn. And so just, I know that's not part of the plan, but just as we think about meeting our goals and being successful, trying to make sure that we're also being flexible. And then one other quick point I just wanted to make to Kwika's question or point about the vouchers is that with the SIB, as you know, some of you may know, there was a waiver that went along with those vouchers and helped ensure that people were housed who were the most chronically homeless. And those waivers didn't necessarily continue into the future. And so I think that'll be important as we think about housing our most vulnerable people who may not qualify for vouchers, that we look to how we can provide some flexibility in that system. But overall, I want to just echo others' thanks. And I do think this is a great plan and very excited to watch us move forward.
Thank you so much, Jenny, for the comments, the context, and your expertise in those areas. I think it's great that we have robust dialogue. I had several questions. I think they're all answered. So I'm at the point for us to call the question for the vote on the action plan. So I move that we approve as HSSA the Action 2020 Action Plan for host. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Daryl, remember I had one more question.
And Randy, we can do questions after we have the move in a second. So before I ask for a vote, I'll turn to Randy for any another comment or any questions that you may have.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot about this earlier. But when I was sharing some of this with the people at Colorado Cross Disability Coalition and the Atlantis community, one thing that was brought up, and I think I've brought this up in the past as well, is something that the disability community is really pushing toward, especially with affordable housing, is universal design. And we would like to encourage, I know it's too late for this year, but maybe in future years that we figure out some way to incentivize builders to use universal design, because so many people are aging and becoming disabled. This allows them to remain in their homes by quickly converting into something that is accessible. So that's all I wanted to say. I just encourage that we do consider that in the future.
Thank you so much, Randy. That is timely, that is important, and that's going to be part of our role as we coordinate with hosts to ensure that those things, at least as we move forward with the execution of the action plan, those things are actually those are included. So thank you, Randy and team. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other questions, comments before I call the question? Hearing none, if board members don't mind coming off of mute, and I do accept Kristen's comment in the chat as her vote as a yes, but We're going to do this by acclamation. Board members that are in favor, please say yes.
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 Board members that oppose, no. Any abstentions? Hearing none, the action plan for 2022 has passed. So congratulations to the team who's worked so hard on this. Thank you, Britta, and your leadership, and for HSSA and the public and community at large for providing really structural, measurable feedback and the changes and willingness from hosts to be inclusive, to do this through the lens of equity, and to ensure that all voices are heard. And Britta, I don't know if you have any closing comments. I at least wanted to say to the public, we do appreciate your feedback. Our meetings will be an hour and a half going forward, starting in January. And we will move the public comment piece to the top of the hour so that your voices will always be inclusive in these calls. So Britta, to close out the meeting.
What a year, what a 2 years it's been. I want to thank everyone for their kind attention, comments, and for always showing up for your community. And I really appreciate that truly. And we'll see you next year.
Thank you, Britta and her team. You guys did a lot of great work.
Thank you, host team. And thank you, Deborah.
Yes, we'll miss you, Deborah. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your week and great weekend. See you
Bye,
next year.
everyone. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Bye.